Hello there, I'm Anna.
And you're listening to What Shapes Us.
This podcast is for anyone who's ever felt lost,
questioned their purpose,
or gone through something that's difficult and struggled to understand what it meant, or what it possibly left behind.
Because sometimes the moments that unsettle us the most
are the ones that quietly began to redefine us.
In this podcast, we'll explore how painful, confusing, or even disorienting experiences can help shape identity.
Not just in terms of who we are, but also how we interpret the world and those around us.
Today, we'll be unpacking how adversity can challenge our assumptions
and how over time it can lead to growth, meaning, and deeper human connection.
Make sure you subscribe on your favorite podcast platform
so you get notified when we drop new episodes and don't miss our weekly episodes launching soon. Welcome to
What Shapes Us.
Welcome to What Shapes Us, where we examine the idea of purpose, not as something fixed or predetermined, but as something that often emerges through difficulty, reflection, and lived experiences. I'm your host, Anna, and I'm here with my amazing co-hosts, Sebastian, Christian, and Alejandra.
Today, we're diving into something that almost everyone experiences, but rarely articulates in a structured way.
The idea that the moments which destabilize us emotionally
can also become the foundation for long-term psychological and personal transformation.
We'll be exploring 3 key parts of this idea: how childhood experiences can shape our internal sense of meaning,
how friendships act as mechanisms for recovery and post-traumatic growth,
and how working with our community transforms individual pain into shared meaning and collective healing.
Each of these layers builds on the other, so by the end of it, we're not just asking what shapes us, but how meaning itself is constructed through these experiences. Let's dive in.
So starting with childhood, early emotional experiences don't just influence behavior. They could fundamentally change the lens through which we interpret reality. That can lay the foundation for how we can form trust, build connections, and construct meaning.
Exactly, especially in cases of emotional neglect or inconsistency. Individuals may struggle to develop what psychologists refer to as a sense of coherence,
which is essentially the belief that life is comprehensible, manageable, and meaningful. It's what allows people to feel like their experiences in the world aren't random or chaotic.
And when that framework is disrupted early on, it doesn't just disappear, but rather it often carries into later phases in life, such as adolescence and adulthood, influencing our relationships, decision-making, and even self-worth.
You're absolutely right, Anna. Without that sense of coherence, people might feel like that they're just navigating life without a stable narrative, like events are happening to them rather than being integrated into a larger sense of identity. I know that I have certainly felt like I've just been going with the flow of things instead of taking charge of my own life.
But there's this interesting twist here. Those same experiences that feel like losing meaning can also trigger deeper self reflection. When meaning is not given, people often feel compelled to search for it.
It's almost paradoxical. Pain disrupts meaning, but it can also initiate the process of finding new meaning.
Exactly. And that process, while incredibly uncomfortable, is often where growth begins. It forces individuals to reconstruct their understanding of themselves and their experiences in a more intentional way. We've been talking about how painful experiences shape who we become, but a lot of that can feel internal. So, we wanted to bring in an expert to help us understand what that actually looks like in real life, especially through behavior. So, today we're joined by a behavioral analyst who works closely with children. Thank you so much for being here.
A pleasure.
So, to start us off, I just want to ask you some questions. First would be, what specific behaviors might indicate that a child is struggling, even if they aren't openly expressing any problems?
A child may show changes in behavior such as increased tantrums, aggression, withdrawal, no compliance, or loss of previously learned skills. You may also see avoidance of tasks, reduced engagement, seeking excessive attention. These behaviors, often communicate that something in the environment is not working for them.
Okay. And how can these patterns like avoidance, aggression, or withdrawal develop over time in response to difficult experiences that the child has had?
Okay, so patterns usually develop because that's what tends to work for the person, or in this case, the child. For example, if a child avoids a task and the task is removed, avoidance is being reinforced. So if you sit a child down to do homework, they start crying, throwing things, and the parent is like, okay, let's take a break, let's go play, and then we can do the homework. The child just learned that by throwing a tantrum, throwing things, they can get away from the task.
Okay, and what does reinforcement, like attention from adults or peers around them, play in maintaining those certain negative behaviors?
So, reinforcement is pretty much everything in behavior. It is a major factor and it is what we use to change everything. If a behavior results in attention, because we have four functions, and those are attention, access to items, escape, or sensory. So, if those are reinforced, the behavior is very likely to continue, even if it is negative attentions like reprimands can maintain behavior if the child is just seeking an interaction or response, to get a rise out of the parent, behaviors can continue.
Right, and how can those changes in routine and structure or consistency influence the child's behavior in noticeable ways?
Children tend to rely on predictability, so when routines or expectations change, behavior may increase because the child isn't sure of what to do or what is expected. So, inconsistent responses from adults can also strengthen problem behaviors because the child learns that persistence may eventually pay off.
And how can community and environment contribute to the healing process of these children?
So, community sets expectations, norms, and opportunities for reinforcement. So, for example, behaviors that are accepted or reinforced in one setting may not be in another. Access to resources, support systems, and consistent expectations from home, school, community, they all end up influencing how much the behavior is going to be happening, how frequently it's going to continue.
Do you have any specific cases that you've worked with children that have these type of issues?
Yeah, we're currently working with over 15 cases.
That's a lot. And I'm assuming they're all very different.
Yes, very. You cannot expect the same thing from one child to be the same with another.
Right.
So thank you so much for sharing all of that. I think that perspective really helps put into words what a lot of people haven't been able to understand about child behavior in these type of circumstances. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
I think what stands out is that the way we act, especially during difficult moments that we all have experienced, isn't random. It's shaped by what we've experienced, and over time, those behaviors can either keep us stuck or help us grow, depending on what support we have. And that's where relationships, especially friendships, become critical.
Because while trauma often isolates, connection has the capacity to reintegrate.
You know, Sebastian, it's actually quite funny that you mentioned that because there's actually research that supports what you're saying. According to Copley and Daniels in an article that they wrote in 2023, post-traumatic growth isn't just an internal process, but rather a relational one. Relational meaning that it involves a connection to others or how well you can connect with others.
Right. Through supporting friendship, people can begin to rebuild trust, not just in others, but in themselves and their ability to navigate the world. This also means that they are reconstructing their sense of self after an event that changed them.
Friendships create a kind of psychological safety, a space where vulnerability is met and validation is also given rather than judgment. This helps people open up about their experiences because they feel they'll be heard rather than criticized.
And that validation is powerful. It helps reframe experiences that might otherwise be internalized as personal failure or worthlessness, which would drag you down further into isolation.
It also introduces a new narrative. When someone listens and reflects your experience back to you, it can also shift how you interpret your own story. It allows you to take charge, taking ownership instead of being controlled by it.
Exactly. Your identity stops being defined solely by what happened to you. It starts to include how you responded, adapted, and grew. And I think that's the moment when you start seeing yourself as a person again, not just a victim or a survival.
And sometimes your friends are able to recognize a resilience in you long before you're able to see it yourself. I know personally I've struggled with things that I didn't know if I could overcome, but having my friends be there and support me and believe in my strength to overcome those things definitely helped during those hard moments.
This is why connection isn't just used for comforting, it's also transformative. Beyond individual friendships, there's also something deeply impactful about community-level healing.
Yeah, because meaning itself isn't just constructed individually, it's often reinforced through shared narratives, traditions, and collective experiences. Anything that needs effort from multiple people in order to overcome an obstacle, really.
Yeah, you're right, Christian. There is even research from Dweck and Byron in 2011 and launched in 2020 that shows that communal spaces, whether cultural, spiritual, or social, help people contextualize suffering within a broader framework.
It's like pain becomes less isolating when it's acknowledged collectively. It transforms from something purely personal into something that connects people. When we all have this shared pain, it helps to overcome it through this group of people.
A powerful example is when survivors of trauma turn their experiences into advocacy or activism, sharing those stories with their communities in the process.
Absolutely right, Sebastian. They're not just processing what happened, but they're also assigning a purpose to it and using that purpose to support others. This is why we see group-style meetings such as Alcoholics Anonymous or drug abuse support groups be so effective, because the people that have already gone through that suffering can channel their experiences into something that is positive for others.
Yeah, you're right. And those spaces sometimes are also needed for others to realize that something is happening in the first place, and also to look for ways to heal. It's not uncommon to be more analytical about other people's stories than ours, but in doing so, those patterns also become more apparent in ourselves, and in helping, the meaning of those experiences evolves. No longer just about loss, it becomes about impact, awareness, and change.
And that's where healing stops being something we carry alone. It begins to stretch outward and become more about inclusive conversations and quiet understanding about being seen. Because we share our experiences, we're not just telling our stories, but we're also creating room for others to recognize themselves in them. And in that recognition, we can see something powerful. We can heal together, and we can become less about fixing what's broken with us and more about building something to overcome the issues that we've had in the past. So, when we step back and look at all of this together, there's an interesting pattern. Pain often begins in isolation,
But healing almost always involves some form of connection.
Whether that's reconnecting with your past in a way that makes sense to you,
Or building relationships that help you reinterpret your experiences.
Or finding a community that reflects your story back to you in a meaningful way.
and maybe purpose isn't something we simply discover,
but rather something we actively construct through reflection and interaction.
Through the narratives we build,
And the connections that gives those narratives depth and validation.
In that sense, meaning isn't fixed. It kind of changes depending on how we process and talk about what we've been through. Something that feels confusing or pointless at first can start to make more sense later, not because it changed, but because our perspective did. The way we think about it, the words we used, and even who we talk to about it, all of that shapes what ends up meaning something to us. Okay? So here's something to think about.
What if the moments that hurt you the most
Are also the ones that fundamentally reshape how you see yourself and the world.
in what role did the people around you play in helping you make sense of those moments?
So pain can begin with isolation, but purpose often emerges through connection, reflection, and shared meaning. Thanks so much for listening to What Shapes Us.
You can find our full show notes at whatshapes.us.com.
And connect with us on Instagram at WhatShapeUsPod.
If you're enjoying the podcast, don't forget to subscribe.
And leave a review. It really helps us grow and reach more listeners.
Until next time.
Remember, even in moments of uncertainty, there is always the potential for growth, meaning, and connection.